$3 million a day. Yeah, you heard that right. Back in the 1980s, a regular young man from Los Angeles was coming home every single night with $3 million in straight cash in his pockets. He wasn't a tech CEO and he wasn't an oil tycoon. He was the king of the biggest drug empire in American history, and they called him Freeway. But here's the twist. He wasn't even the real villain of this story. Behind his entire empire was a power so shocking it still makes people uncomfortable to this day – the CIA. So how does an illiterate kid end up flooding his own country with drugs allegedly backed by the American government itself? Why do they still call him the man who started the crack epidemic? Welcome to Almighty Gang. Today we're pulling back the curtain on the real story of Freeway Rick Ross. Rick Ross grew up in South Central LA in a struggling black household. As a kid, he didn't dream about being a drug dealer. He wanted to be a tennis player, and the truth is, he was actually good at it. But there was one problem that changed everything. Rick couldn't read or write. Because of that, no college would give him a scholarship. His whole dream fell apart. And when that dream died, Rick stepped into the dark side. But he didn't want to be just another small-time hustler on the block. He wanted to run a business. Back then, cocaine was a rich man's drug, too expensive for the streets. So Rick came up with a new formula. They called it Ready Rock. We know it as crack cocaine. Cheap to make, cheap to sell, and way more powerful. Rick realized that if he could flood the streets with it at a low price, the whole city would be in his hands. But that raised one big question. Where was he getting cheap cocaine like that? That's when he met a mysterious supplier from Nicaragua, a man named Danilo Blandon. Danilo started selling Rick cocaine at prices that didn't make sense. Everybody else was paying $30,000 to $40,000 a kilo, while Rick was getting it for just $10,000. That turned Rick into the Walmart of the drug game. He was moving so much product so cheaply that his competition couldn't survive. By 1984, the streets had a new name for him, Freeway Rick Ross. His empire stretched from California to Texas to Ohio, Indiana, and even all the way to New York. Money was coming in so fast that he had entire crews whose only job was to count cash. His name rang so loud that the rapper you see today named Rick Ross, he took that name straight from this man. But now ask yourself, how is Danilo getting thousands of kilos of cocaine so cheap? That's where this whole story flips upside down. Because Danilo wasn't just a drug dealer, he was allegedly working with the CIA. At the time, Nicaragua was in a civil war, and the U.S. government wanted to secretly fund a rebel group called the Contras to fight socialism. Congress said no. So according to journalist Gary Webb, the CIA allowed cocaine to be smuggled into black communities in America, sold on the streets, and that dirty money was then used to buy weapons for war.
Let that sink in. The U.S. government allegedly poisoning its own people to fund another country's war. And the main pawn in that chess game was Freeway Rick Ross. But the power game is ruthless. You're a king as long as you're useful, and once you're not, they throw you straight in the trash. In 1996, Rick's empire collapsed, and the man who supplied him, Danilo Blandon, snitched. He turned Rick in to federal agents, and the craziest part? Because of CIA protection, Danilo only did a few years in prison. Then the government paid him $45,000 as a reward. Meanwhile, Rick Ross was made the fall guy and sentenced to life in prison. The man who helped destroy America was thrown away by America. But prison didn't break Rick. Behind those walls, for the first time in his life, he learned how to read. He studied law, fought his own case, and found loopholes. Slowly, he started shaving time off his sentence. In 2009, Freeway Rick Ross walked out of prison, a free man. Today, he's no longer a drug lord. He's an author and a motivational speaker. But the damage from the crack epidemic still lives on in the streets. Tens of thousands of families were destroyed. Whole generations were lost. Rick Ross's life teaches a brutal truth. In the underworld, there are no real friends. And when governments step into crime, justice don't mean nothing anymore. The real players stay hidden, and the pawns die in the streets. So what do you think? Was the CIA really the mastermind behind the crack epidemic? Drop your opinion in the comments. If this story hit you, smash that like button and subscribe to Almighty Gang, because over here, we expose the masks. See you in the next file.